joining us today as we celebrate Black History Month with this kickoff event. This event has been organized by APHA EDI Focus Group in partnership with DEFRA and the Forestry Commission. In a moment, I will invite our speaker, Wali Rahman, to take the stage. But before then, some background. The first is a plug for our EDI focus group in APHA. We meet regularly to share, amongst other things, awareness raising and educational sessions to inform our policies and help create an inclusive environment where people from all backgrounds can be their authentic self and thrive. If you're an APHA and would like to be involved, please feel free to get in touch with me afterwards. The second is a bit about our speaker today. Wali Rahman is a diversity and well-being manager at the Forestry Commission with many years of experience working in education, local government, and the community, voluntary sector, and now the civil service. Since joining the Forestry Commission 18 months ago, he has helped to set up 3 new staff networks, organized various events, set up a corporate EDI steering group, amongst other achievements. He has an Institute of Leadership and Management certificate in unconscious bias and has created and delivered training to over 600 people, including senior managers, leaders in local government, police, housing associations, schools, charities, and various NHS trusts. He recently graduated from the Stepping Up Diversity Leadership Program and also received a Rising Star Award 2023. He is now a non-executive director of the program board and a mentor on this year's program. He has a passion for diversity and inclusion and a desire to fight against inequality and injustice. And this is what drives him to show up every day in the hope of making a positive impact in the workplace and for those around him. Wali is of Indian origin and his wife is Black, mixed race Gambian and English heritage. Together, they have 2 teenage children who they try to teach the best of those cultures to. And this is one of the many reasons that Black History Month matters to him. When I first met Wali very, very recently, he reminded me of a dynamo. He has such a passion and energy for all things EDI, and I'm really glad that he has agreed to come and share with us today his reflections on why Black History Month should matter. Wali will share for around 45 minutes. Please put your questions and your organization in the chat. We will pick up at the Q&A session at the end. People will be muted. The session will be recorded, so you don't need to worry. And the slides and recording will be available afterwards. Thank you. So with that, I will now hand over to Wali. Welcome, Wali. Take the stage.
Thank you very much, Teresa. I'm really honored to be here. And thank you to both you and Rose for inviting me on behalf of APHA and DEFRA. I'll just make sure that everything's working on my side first. So I want to start off by taking you back to the year 1915. The First World War is going on, and also it's only been 3 years since the Titanic sunk. It would still be another 12 months before penicillin is invented. In the United States of America, a 39-year-old historian from Harvard University, with a PhD from Harvard University, only the second African-American to earn a Harvard doctorate degree, begins a mission to promote research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information about Black life, history, and culture to the global community. His name is Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and he's referred to by many as the father of Black history. A year later, in 1916, he founded a journal to help promote Black history, which he felt was all too often overlooked, ignored, and even suppressed by the writers of history books and the teachers who used them. Dr. Woodson knew the importance of education and believed it was key to reducing racial prejudices in his country. In 1926, Dr. Woodson and his organization sponsored a Black History Week, which was a precursor to Black History Month. Now, the main purpose of this was to encourage the history of African Americans to be taught in the country's schools. The week chosen was the second week of February to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, two men who greatly influenced the African American population. It took time for the week to gain traction with the American public, with Dr. Woodson creating pamphlets and educational materials to not only help promote the event, but also to help teachers teach Black history. By the 1940s, the week-long celebrations had begun to attract larger audiences. Meanwhile, let's come back to Great Britain. There was mass immigration at that time, including from the Caribbean, in order to help rebuild the country after the Second World War. Incidentally, I'm sure many of you are aware that this year, in fact, is the 75th anniversary of the arrival of SS Windrush at Tilbury Docks, which saw the migration of thousands of people from the Caribbean to Britain, who were invited by the government to come and help rebuild the country, including many of our institutions such as the NHS. But as the country started to become more and more multicultural, there was an increase in racism, racial violence, and open discrimination, whether it be in housing and employment and so on. And this, of course, affected not only the lives, but the livelihoods of many of those immigrants from all around the world, including those from the Caribbean and the Windrush generation. This led to Britain's own civil rights movement. Something that we're not taught in school, unfortunately, well, at least when I was at school, is that Britain also played a huge part in the civil rights movement in the Western world. And in the part of the country where I live, near Bristol, there was the Bristol bus boycott. And one of the civil rights heroes was Paul Stephenson, along with Roy Hackett and others. They led a boycott against the Bristol Bus Company, which operated a color bar that refused employment to Black and Asian people. Stevenson, at the time, was a 26-year-old teacher. He organized the 60-day bus boycott on the city's buses. Thousands of people supported the bus boycott, and the news of the company's racist policies made headlines. By 28 August 1963, the bus company lifted the employment color ban. Now, interestingly, this was the very same day that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. And this year marks the 60th anniversary of that speech. So if we look back to the US at this time, this was right in the middle of the civil rights movement of the 60s. And this civil rights movement helped the week-long Black History event grow into Black History Month over in the US. And initially, it was reported to have taken off on university campuses, with the first month-long event taking place in 1970. By 1976, schools and community centers across the US started honoring the month, and it was officially recognized by the US President Gerald Ford. And they chose February to be Black History Month in the US. Let's come back again across the Atlantic to Great Britain and fast forward to 1985. One morning, a 35-year-old Ghanaian immigrant by the name of Akiaba, or who is now Dr. Akiaba Adaisebo, he walked into work at the Greater London Council, where he was the coordinator of special projects in the ethnic minorities unit. There, he greeted his colleague Elizabeth, who was looking very sad, so he asked her what was wrong. Dr. Adaisebo recalls in a Guardian interview that's widely available that with tears in her eyes, Elizabeth said to him, "Last night, I was putting my son Marcus to bed, and he asked me, 'Mummy, why can't I be white?' She continued, 'I named my son Marcus after Marcus Garvey, and here he is, just 6 years old, questioning his identity.' She says, 'I failed my son.'" Very powerful statement from Elizabeth. And Dr. Adaisebo responded by saying, "No, Elizabeth, you haven't failed your son. The national curriculum, local authorities, churches, and the institutions, they have failed your son. Not only your son, they failed all children growing up in this country." He told The Guardian in this interview that that conversation stirred something in him. And he said, "I spent about a month or two wondering what was to be done as I observed the state of young Black children in this country. When asked about their heritage and background, I saw how they shrank and how embarrassed they were." He says, "I decided that every child growing up in the UK must have an appreciation and an understanding of Africa, Africans, people of African descent, their contributions to world civilizations from antiquity to the present, and especially to the growth and development of the UK and Europe." So with this vision, Dr. Adaisebo approached colleagues at the GLC, and together they came up with a series of historical lectures and concerts, which took place in 1985 and 1986 to celebrate Africa's contribution to world civilization. This was led by intellectuals, politicians, and musicians from across the African diaspora. These events attracted many important figures of that era, such as Angela Davis, Willie Mandela, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and dozens more. So after the success of these events, Dr. Adaisebo drafted a declaration in which October was designated as UK's Black History Month from 1987 onwards. And the rest, as I say, is history. So after establishing the UK Black History Month, Dr. Adaisebo was operations manager for the Notting Hill Carnival Committee from 1989 to 1993. He was also a special envoy of International Alert, which brokered peace between warring factions in Liberia and Sierra Leone. More recently, Dr. Adaisebo helped set up a forestry company in Ghana that successfully reforested more than 6,000 hectares of the degraded Boomfum Forest Reserve. Now, I want to show you a video which I think really helps us to appreciate the gravity of why Dr. Adaisebo was so touched by the conversation with his colleague Elizabeth, which led to the idea of UK Black History Month. This video, you may have seen it already, but it's really powerful, and it's called The Doll Test. I'll just play it for you now.
Quale bambola è bianca? Quale bambola è nera? Quale delle due è bella?
Questa.
Qual è quella bella? Qual è quella brutta? E qual è quella buona? Quale è cattiva? Quale è buona?
Lei.
Perché è buona?
Perché ha gli occhi celesti.
Quale è cattiva? Perché è cattiva?
Perché è tutto nero.
E qual è la bambola che ti somiglia di più? Quale bambola è nera?
Mi ha offeso.
Chi?
Tu.
Perché?
Perché mi hai chiamato nero.
Perché ti offendo?
Mi offendi perché altri bambini mi hanno offeso con cattiveria.
No, io non ho usato nessuna cattiveria.
Quello mi sta guardando storto.
So I'm sure you'll agree with me that that's a really powerful video, and it really demonstrates that these prejudices and biases are not only are they in all of us as human beings, but even biases against people of color, against Black people, exist in children of color, Black children. And going back to the conversation between Dr. Adesebo and Elizabeth, I think it really highlights the need for why he saw a need for Black History Month, something to give Black children an understanding of their culture and some pride in who they are and their identity. So let's look at the aims of Black History Month then. To read out everything there, but you read those for yourself. But I'll just highlight the key points there. So Black History Month is about celebrating Black achievements. And we know that Black people have contributed to all facets, all aspects of life, society, culture, whether it be in sports, in science, in literature, the arts, politics, and more. It's also about educating and raising awareness. Just that video, we saw the importance of addressing stereotypes and prejudices. It's about promoting inclusion. We want to make Britain a place where everyone, regardless of their background and where they're from, is welcome and feels a part of the society. We can only do this through events such as this and marking things like Black History Month and so on. It also helps to inspire future generations. And it's important, just like Dr. Adesebo felt, it's important to inspire Black youth who will hopefully be our future leaders, future politicians, and inspirational people in all fields. So not only is it about history, but it's also about the future, looking forward. It's also about fostering dialogue and engagement. because it brings people together, like the opportunity we have this morning to all come together and engage in a dialogue and discussion about the injustices, about the positive aspects of diversity and inclusion and so on, and the challenges. And it also helps to preserve cultural heritage, which is important for people of all backgrounds, including Black people and the future generations. So some people say that we shouldn't reduce Black history to just 1 month. And I agree with this completely. It should be a part of the everyday conversation around British history. It should be a part of the school curriculum and so on. So most schools still teach a history curriculum which focuses on traditional events and the achievements of only white figures. Black History Month gives everyone the opportunity to share, celebrate, and understand the impact of Black history, heritage, and culture. As you know, education is devolved in the UK, so there are marked differences in the curriculum in England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Over the years, there have been growing calls from campaigners for Black history to be included in the curriculum in England and not just celebrated in October. So the DFE says Black history is an important topic and schools have the freedom to teach it within the history curriculum and can do so from primary school age onwards. However, I personally feel that there is no harm in singling out a whole month to celebrate Black history, and at the same time, push it to be mainstream, be part of the everyday conversation. I think we can do both. After all, I feel this is the reason why Dr. Woodson, going back all those years, that was his original purpose of having Black History Month in the US, to help it become mainstream. And over the years, Black History Month in the UK, I feel, started to become what many people refer to as food, flags, and fun type of celebration. And the Black aspect of Black History Month sort of started to become lost. Many people were calling for and organizing Diversity Month events in October. So they felt that calling it Black History Month was too specific. As an Asian person, I am the first to say, or I was the first among the first to say that that's not right. I don't believe that should have happened. Now, all these years later, we have Asian Heritage Month, or South Asian Heritage Month. We have East and Southeast Asian Heritage Month. We have Latinx Heritage Month. We have so many different awareness months, weeks, days. The diversity calendar is full. But if you go back to the 90s and even 20 years, 15 years ago, Black History Month was one of those OGs, yeah, if you like, the original diversity awareness events in the calendar. So it's only right that we come back to celebrating Black History Month as it should be. And as Teresa mentioned, for me personally, it is important, just like Asian Heritage Month is important for me, but Black History Month is also important for me because my wife is Black, or mixed race. She's mixed Black and British. So my children, I feel it's really important for them to have an understanding of not only Black history, Asian history, English history as well, because they have all three in their family. And for me, and it's not just because my wife is Black. I think Black History Month would have been important for me regardless. because it's something I've always been passionate about ever since a teenager, even before I met my wife. One of the things that really inspired me as a teenager was reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. And that really was a powerful book for me. And I still think today it's one of the best books you can read to really understand the struggles, especially of people in African American people in America, but also how that translates to the African diaspora across the world. And yeah, and that interest for me has taken me to places like Gambia, where my wife, her father's family is from, going to the Roots village, understanding that, many of you have seen Roots or read the book Roots by Alex Haley, and understanding that was the place where slavery started from, the transatlantic slave trade, and also going to America. So one of my favorite places is Washington, D.C., and the African American Museum, the Smithsonian Museum there, which I feel if anyone has the opportunity to visit, it's probably, from my limited experience of traveling the world, it's the best museum that I've seen in the world. But coming back to our topic then, it looked like Black History Month was almost going to be sidelined. Around 2019, beginning of 2020, people were really questioning, do we really need Black History Month? Aren't Black people well integrated? Yes. There's so many of these events. Are we not wasting taxpayers' money? Maybe some councils were asking that question. But as we all know, in 2020, the world changed forever. And it was a real wake-up call in many regards. Of course, we know that the murder of George Floyd occurred, and this reignited the Black Lives Matter protests, which of course was already in existence. And George Floyd was not the first Black man to be murdered at the hands of police in America, nor was he the last, unfortunately. That year, we also realized that there were inequalities within the healthcare system, and that was exposed by COVID. We saw the racism that occurred after the England men's football team lost in the finals of the Euros. The following year, of course, it was not in 2020, but those few years really highlighted the need for us to go back and have Black History Month, dedicate it to Black people, and fight inequalities that occur against Black people. And as I said, now we mark other months that celebrate the histories and heritage of other communities. So it's all worked out, I think, in the end for everyone. So what does Black Britain look like? It's important to understand some of the statistics, I think, to know, because a lot of the times the Black population data ends up getting lost in the overall, what we used to call BAME. But we no longer, at least in the civil service, we don't use BAME anymore. But the ethnic minority population, according to the census of 2021, showed us that 18% of the country's population were ethnic minorities. Now, if we delve deeper, we find that that's around 5.4% who are Black or identify as Black, including mixed race, Black and other, so Black and white, Black and Asian, and so on. So we have 3.3 million Black people in the UK. Unemployment rate of Black people in the UK is 7.2%. And Black employees hold just 1.5% of top management roles in the UK private sector. Black women in the UK are 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth. And Black people are more than 3 times as likely to be stopped and searched by the Metropolitan Police than white people, and this is according to the Home Office. So we know that there are so many, and it's just a few of the inequalities that exist against Black people and people of color in general, but specifically Black people. But we don't want to just focus on those challenges and the negatives. Black History Month is about celebrating, as we mentioned, celebrating the achievements, celebrating the history and the culture of Black people. And why not? Black history is British history. I know it's a bit of a cliche now, but it's true. People from African and Caribbean backgrounds have been a fundamental part of British history for centuries. However, campaigners believe their value and contribution to society is often overlooked, ignored, or distorted. And in fact, Black history in Britain goes back to Roman times, if not before. Here I want to highlight just a few examples. Obviously, this is not a history lesson, and we don't have ages to go through it. I'll leave that up to you to go and research in your own time, but I just want to highlight a few of those historical figures that we know about. So John Blank is one of those, and this is a portrait from 1507, and he's probably the most well-known Black Briton from Tudor England. And he was one of the court trumpeters for Henry VII. And he performed at both Henry VII's funeral and Henry VIII's coronation in 1509. Next, we have Olaudah Equiano, or otherwise known as Gustavus Vassa. He was born in the Kingdom of Benin and quickly forced into slavery. Equiano learned to read and write and eventually saved up enough money to buy his own freedom, after which he dedicated his life to campaigning for the abolition of slavery. He became a member of the Sons of Africa abolitionist group and published his autobiography in 1789, depicting the horrors of slavery. The book was a bestseller and aided the abolitionist cause. We also have Dido Elizabeth Bell, Britain's first Black aristocrat. And some of you may have seen the film, which is, I believe it's on Amazon, Belle, that depicts her life. So go and check that out. And also, while I'm talking about films, another one probably worthy of mention as Black History Month this year is about celebrating and saluting our sisters is Hidden Figures. So go and watch that as well. Another Black woman who contributed to British history is Olive Morris. So Olive fought for Black women's rights in Britain. In the short 27 years that she was alive, Olive raised awareness of inequalities by traveling, writing, organizing protests, and setting up support groups. And in fact, Black history is world history, it's human history. So, and we know it doesn't begin with slavery. And how many of us in school were taught about some of the amazing historical figures and the achievements of Black people throughout history? How many of us were taught that an African king from the Empire of Mali by the name of Mansa Musa was the richest man in the history of the world. So you can forget Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, all of those people. Mansa Musa was, more wealthier than they are. And you can read about this, just Google it, and you'll find many articles in Forbes, in The Guardian, Telegraph, Financial Times, you name it. It's well documented. How many of us were taught about Lewis Latimer, who invented longer lasting light bulbs with a carbon filament, making Thomas Edison's invention, the light bulb, better and more accessible for you and me? So we're not saying he invented the light bulb, we'll give that to Thomas Edison, but without Lewis Latimer's invention, we, the common people, would not have light bulbs in our homes. How many of us were taught about Dr. Shirley Jackson and that her inventions are the foundation for a lot of modern technology? She helped to invent developments like touch-tone dialing and call waiting. Most impressively, Dr. Jackson also invented fiber optic cables, an assembly that links communication systems around the world. So I think even the fact that we're here on a Teams call over the internet, has a lot to do with Dr. Shirley Jackson's invention. How many of us were taught about Garrett Morgan, who came up with several significant inventions, including an improved sewing machine and the gas mask? However, one of Garrett Morgan's most influential inventions was the improved 3-color traffic light. And there are many more historical and contemporary Black figures we should know about, and we can all do our own research about them. This brings us to the UK again, so keep coming back and forth. And this year's Black History Month. So Black History Month UK is an organisation that promotes the month with a resource pack, magazine, and other educational material. So I don't know if you can see the magazine here. So get your copy from blackhistorymonth.org.uk. So they have chosen the theme this year, which is saluting our sisters. And they will be highlighting the role Black women have played in shaping Black history and inspiring change. One such sister we salute is Sharon Inkotaria, the editor of Black History Month magazine. And she said in a Guardian article that while Black History Month would always be a time to celebrate all Black Britons, there has been a point where Black women's voices have been silenced, their ideas and contributions ignored in history and today. Therefore, it is important to just take stock, reflect on those achievements, and celebrate them in this month. So we celebrate Sharon, and we salute her. We salute Teresa and Rose for putting this event together. We celebrate Jessica Huntley, who's on the front of Black History Month magazine, and countless other Black women. And this year's resource pack includes posters of historical and contemporary leading Black women, including Mary Seacole, Claudia Jones, Olive Morris, who we talked about, Audre Lorde, Kanya King, Nicola Adams, MBE, Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, and so many others. So saluting our sisters is about commemorating Black women who have made headlines or broken barriers, but it's also about acknowledging the everyday heroes, the Black mothers, the teachers, the nurses, the activists, the creators, the visionaries. It's about recognizing that the world we know today would be fundamentally different without the contributions of Black women. Black women have contributed in every field imaginable, yet their achievements often go unnoticed and unappreciated. And oftentimes their culture is appropriated and taken advantage of. So this year, as I mentioned, it's also the 75th anniversary of the Empire Windrush and the arrival of the Windrush generation to this country. So in conclusion, and to sum up what I've said, why does Black History matter? So the necessity for Black History Month stems from the historical underrepresentation and marginalization of Black people and their contributions. We talked about that. We know that despite playing significant roles in shaping the UK's history and culture, Black stories and achievements have often been overlooked or disregarded. Black History Month functions as a corrective measure by highlighting these contributions and experiences. Furthermore, it provides a valuable opportunity for individuals from all backgrounds to learn about and appreciate the diversity of British society, fostering a more inclusive and equitable environment. It encourages essential conversations about racial equality and social justice, which are crucial for addressing ongoing challenges related to racism and discrimination. And ultimately, Black History Month promotes unity, understanding, and social progress in the UK. Now, at the bottom of the slide, you'll notice a logo there for Empower, Develop People, EDP training. The reason that's there is because that slide is taken from an email they sent while I was preparing this presentation. It's as if by fate, I received an email from them. And instead of reinventing the wheel, I just thought everything they said in that email just says everything that I feel highlights why Black History Month matters. So I just want to give them a shout out. And you can go to their website, edptraining.co.uk. And they're based in Bristol. So finally, well, a couple more slides, but I want to just highlight again that Black History Month is for everyone. In reality, it's important for all of us and not just Black people, because I feel most Black people, they know their history, they know their identity, they know about their culture, but how much do we know? Call us allies, or fellow brothers and sisters in humanity from different races and backgrounds. How much do we know about Black history, Black culture, Black heritage? So it's really a time to educate ourselves as well. And I really like this quote, which really resonated with me, from a white US politician, Marty Meehan, who said that Black History Month must be more than just a month of remembrance. It should be a tribute to our history, the collective, our history, and reminder of the work that lies in the months and years ahead. So we don't just stop after Black History Month, we continue throughout the year. And there are other opportunities for us to revisit, just as there is with other protected characteristics and groups. And finally, I just want to leave you with some of the books that helped to shape my understanding of Black history, and I really recommend these books. So I mentioned one of those for me has been the autobiography of Malcolm X. Also, Ibram X. Kendi, for me, is a modern Malcolm X. Really love his work. So read his books, Stamped and How to Be an Anti-Racist. Of course, David Olusoga, he's a genius as well. And there are many other books there that I can recommend. And I'm sure everyone's got their own recommendations as well. So with that, I will stop there. And thank you again to Teresa, to Rose, and thank you all for listening. And I'll open up the floor back to Teresa for questions, and whether you want to put them in the chat. I don't know if anyone has, or ask them directly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you can see by all the clapping, virtual clapping of hands, and a lot of the messages in the chat. I think people have really, really learned from this, found it really useful. And yeah, I want to say thank you so much for that, Wally. Again, as I said, when I first met you, I thought this is a dynamo. I don't think that has changed at all. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this. It's a truly historical gathering of information. And as we've put in the chat, the recording will be available afterwards, as well as the slides. There is something I wanted to say. You mentioned the Hidden Figures. I don't know if any of you have watched it, and it's a film about three Black women in the States around early 60s who were very, very clever and had to push their way, you know, mathematicians, had to push their way up to the very, very top within NASA, working to support the US space program. The name Hidden Figures, talking about that, starring Taraji P. Henson as a main star, but also Octavia Spencer and Ghislaine Monet, representing Catherine Gobler, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson. I watched that film, I don't know how many times. The very first couple of times, I really cried. The amazing pressure these women were under, the things they had to go through, the prejudice all around at that time, and they still pushed through to achieve what they achieved. It's just incredible, and it's an encouragement for me not to give up, because we all have equal opportunity. We should have equal opportunity to thrive where we are. Now, before I take any questions, I also want to say, somebody put in the chat, what do you think is the best way to help share Black History Month and its importance? I think events like this, what I've come to realize is a lot of people don't know. They really, really do not know. You think, oh, of course they should know. Wally, you said something like Black people know their history. Well, I don't think it's necessarily so. A lot of second, third generation Black people may not know because they're not taught. It's not taught in our schools. So, and generally a lot of people don't know. So for me, in the EDI space, and certainly with regard to this topic, education and awareness raising are the most important. Of course, there's going to always be people who don't want to know. That's fine. But I think by and large, the majority of people will learn from sessions that provide balanced views like you have done. So thank you very much. I hope that answered the question, one of the questions I picked up. I don't know if there's been any other questions. Yeah, I don't see any other. Could you mention the name of the museum in Washington? I think it's the Smithsonian, isn't it?
Yes, I've put that in the chat there.
Yeah, fine.
And I've been to that museum twice. It's honestly, I can go back again and again. It's a real eye opener.
Thank you. Sorry, somebody was wanting to say something as I was speaking.
I was just reading out the question on the museum.
All right. Thank you. So any other questions? Thoughts?
I put a question on, Teresa.
Yeah.
This is Fran. I just wondered if Wally, if you've had any thoughts on how we can interrupt or educate very young children to interrupt the sort of racism and the internalized racism that happens at very, very young age. How we go about, because it strikes me that that's the place where a lot of attention needs to be put, because they learn at a very, very young age, you know, wrong information about themselves, and by the same token, obviously white children learn the opposite sort of information. I just wondered what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's really important as well. It's difficult to influence, as we saw, and I teach unconscious bias as well, and one of the things we learned that these biases get instilled in children from a very young age, whether it be gender stereotypes or racial stereotypes and so on. So I think education is really important. Obviously, it goes without saying, but how do we do that? I think we have to really try harder to influence the schools, and I think we can all do that by becoming governors. So, for example, one of the ways I feel influencing some of that change is through being a governor at my son's school, and I'm actually an equalities governor. So they recently opened up, a new governor role just around equalities, and especially I think, and that's secondary school. I think it's probably more important to get in to primary schools, and again, whether it's through being a governor or as a parent, suggesting books for the library, demanding that they mark, if Black History Month, and have themes around it, projects around it, and so on. And I think also just if we all take responsibility for our own people under our own care, because sometimes we're helpless around, what society thinks or can do. But I think representation in general in the media is really good at the moment. So we see, lots of positive stories coming out, whether it be on Netflix or BBC, and many other forms of media. I think it's really important to influence that through the schools and young people, get them to read authors of different backgrounds, especially Black authors as well, and so on. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Wali.
And,
Thank you.
yeah, just to say that what children see when they're growing up, the images they see on TV, around them, in books, in the media, really, really important. And that's why it's good to promote positively as much as possible, that people are different. Diversity is not just one, it's not just white, it's not just Black, it's not just Asian. So growing up in this country, it was very, very difficult because I was always the Black one wherever I was, and it was difficult. But as time has gone on, that has really changed a lot, and I'm grateful for that. Obviously, there's still a lot to be done. Lillian, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Teresa. Hello, Wali.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Lillian Eldrin. I'm the head of Project Race for DEFRA Group, and I've worked with Teresa and Rose and a few others for quite a few years. And this has been a brilliant session, and thank you ever so much for attending and organising it. And I'm just sort of a bit of a love-hate relationship with Black History Month, because it's that, like you've explained earlier, I think it's a really great opportunity to highlight, to raise, to educate, to celebrate, and I wouldn't take that away. But at the same time, and this is a bit of a shout out to the people on this call as well, I really would like the conversation to go on for the whole year. And we all put so much effort into Black History Month to make it an amazing event. And there are so many people who then say, oh, I've learned, but then work gets in the way or life gets in the way. So it's a bit of a shout out to the people in this room, this virtual room, that if you would like to get more involved in educating and making a difference, then please, there's Teresa, there's Rose, there's myself, there's lots of other people who want to carry on this conversation and are trying to do so. So please do get in touch, and I'm sure we can work out a way of extending this for more than 30 days. So thank you for starting the conversation.
Thank you.
Before you go on,
Karen.
Teresa, there's a question, I think it's come up several times,
Okay.
about the comments from the Chancellor and Home Secretary. The Chancellor announced this week that EDI expenditures will be audited. Wali, any comments on that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. And like with anything that's funded by the taxpayer, we should be audited, and justify spend and activity. So that's fine. I think events like this and our staff networks and all of those groups will highlight the need for us to carry on investing in EDI. So I'm not really worried about that myself. I think there's a genuine desire for EDI to continue and a need for it in the civil service. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I don't know. The person who posed that question, was Wally's answer sufficient?
Hi, Rose, it's Christian. Yes, thank you, Wally. That does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have Shama Hayat, and then after that, Phil Deborah.
Thanks, Teresa. I just have a suggestion. I think just picking up on Lillian's point, it's really important to keep the momentum going throughout the year. And I believe that the movement that we have and what we need to do, we have strength in numbers, but we also have strength in collaboration. So, for example, I'm CAFCAS and I'm the chair of Kaleidoscope in CAFCAS, which is the largest network for Black, Asian and ethnic minority staff. And I've come across you today, and I think we need to be doing more collaborations throughout the year to keep this momentum going. So just going back to, we came in solidarity for George Floyd, and we made a noise and we were heard. And I think to keep doing that, because we still have our struggles ahead, I think we need to be doing this more. This is wonderful, and perhaps linking in, because I'm now going to invite you to one of my meetings. I think is the way forward to raise awareness that we are Black, Asian, and in the ethnic minority throughout the year. It's not just October. So thank you.
Yeah, and can I just say on that, I think these days we also have that opportunity to carry on the conversation because, for example, I'm after Black History Month, start looking towards February, which is Race Equality Week. So there are other opportunities throughout the year. Obviously, these are official, or they become official days or popular days. But in general, we have our staff networks. We can continue to invite guest speakers and keep it on the agenda. So I don't think, for me, definitely, in the last 7 or 8 years, it's never been just restricted to Black History Month. We've always kept it going, through various events, through the staff networks I've co-chaired and so on. So yeah, I think definitely we can do that.
Thank you. We have 2 minutes. Just let Phil Deborah speak, because the hand has been up for quite a while. Thank you for patience.
Yeah. Thank you, Wali, for your nice presentation. I think it's well collected. Well, one of the things that I wanted to touch, when we look at the kids with less confidence, I think identity plays part of it. And I think it all play a part. As a parents, how do we give the kids confidence to believe in their skin? So I think one of the things that maybe now we have dolls at home where we don't only have to look at white dolls, we need to look at black dolls to also help the kids to have confidence in their skin. So I think it's very interesting to see when you are Black, you don't have that confidence to identify yourself, and it really breaks the kids as well. The second thing that I wanted to touch, I think you talk about unemployment. It goes further to say that how do we tackle unemployment in the Black environment, because we know the challenge. The challenge is when they're going for interviews, they are turned down. They are not. Even sometimes somebody will tell you even your name, sometimes push you down. And how do we tackle this? I think we need more empowerment. We need more Black businesses. I think these are some of the things that when you touching on employment, I'm looking at it not just getting into employment, but how do we empower ourselves as Black people, not only depending on the codes of minority, but also trying to empower ourselves in England. And I think that can be the direction of some of the things that Black people can do, and we have to put some of these messages out. But I don't know if maybe you have messages to give us in terms of how we can empower ourselves in that direction.
We're kind of running out of time. We have literally no more time, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So but perhaps put it in the chat. Yeah. We can pick up on questions not answered that are in the chat. So So with that, I just really want to thank everybody again. This has been awesome. I've never done anything like this before, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I was saying to Wali, I wonder what's going to happen. So thank you so much. I agree that we need to all come together. We need to continue to not reinvent the wheel, but pull our resources together so that we can be more effective. Yes, our next event will be next month. And it's the Black Farmer. Some of you may have heard of him, Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, literally the first Black farmer in Britain. And his event is entitled The Dangers of Playing It Safe. He has worked a lot with ministers in the past and has done a lot to try and really promote diversity within the farming. If you know anything about DEFRA and our farming background, it tends to be, white middle class elite. He's been trying, he has a brand, there's so much. So if you're able, I would like to encourage you to attend, The Dangers of Playing It Safe next week, 11th October, 11 a.m. to 12:30. And then with that, I will say, Sue, please, can you put your question in the chat? We're completely out of time. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Much.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye.